Hey Jeremy, how's it going?
That's great. Thank you for having me. This is
Yeah, welcome.
exciting.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. I would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit and kind of tell us how you got into researching the creation.
Yeah, thank you. I was born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, actually, Sandy. Um, and I'm now married with three kids of my own in South Jordan, Utah, and have one on the way.
Oh,
Uh,
congratulations.
Thanks. We're excited about that. And um, with my two oldest, or first of all, I guess with work, I just kind of a little bit more background on me is I've been in real estate for about 12 years, kind of did the family thing. Me and my brother partnered up and started a flipping business. And it was good for us financially. And so I found that I had a little extra time when I was able to hire things out and hire employees. And so I like to travel and I like to explore new things. That's one of my hobbies. And with my boys, they found a huge liking and interest in dinosaurs. So we spend all our time going around looking at dinosaur bones. They're ages 6 and 4. So as you can imagine, any given day, I'm stepping on dinosaur toys at home
Yeah.
and screaming in pain because they're all over the floor and they're everywhere. We have every kind of dinosaur you can imagine.
Right.
From a Dunkleosteus fish to a Tyrannosaurus rex to a pterosaurs, flying dinosaurs, and then the hybrids that have been um, modified through the Jurassic World movies.
Yeah.
My my boys are obsessed with the hybrids. The Indominus Rex. I mean, I'm sure you may have seen. Have you seen the Jurassic World movies?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, the Indominus Rex and
Mhm.
is one of his favorites. So we have those everywhere, and so I've become interested in this topic and kind of was researching. Actually, I do a lot of YouTube videos, and I'm just very curious person. Sometimes I'll ask people 30 questions, and they're like, "Are you a news reporter?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just a inquisitive person."
Yeah.
And so my mom started to show me these videos about dinosaurs in the Bible. And growing up, I never knew like where the dinosaurs fit in the plan. My dad always said, "Oh, maybe God created other worlds." Or sorry, when he created our Earth, maybe he brought pieces of other worlds together and brought the bones maybe from other worlds,
Hmm.
because maybe the matter, maybe he just organized it and brought it together. And that was a theory I've heard many, many times now from members of the church. The next reason was, or the next theory I hear is that there's periods of time that God created the earth in longer periods of time. Maybe it wasn't 6 days, maybe it was 6 million years, each period of time, a million years or whatever. I've heard that theory. So anyway, I never had heard this theory before about the dinosaurs and the evidence of the dragons and how it all fit together and the flood of Noah. And I was just amazed. It just blew my mind. I don't know what it was. It just blew my mind. I was wowed, and I could not like contain it. I couldn't keep it to myself. I was showing it to everyone, telling everyone, and I'm naturally a pretty outspoken person. So then I got on Facebook and I started finding groups. And first I was finding creation versus evolutionists, and I would argue and have these debates and share things. And I was so excited about it. And then I met Justin, and I wanted to have Justin on here instead of me because he is so more well versed than I am. But he has struggles with Tourette's syndrome. And I asked him, I said, "Do you want to do it?" And he said, "No, why don't you do it?" Um, it's been getting worse to where he had to quit his job, and his wife had to start working. And he's been staying home, but he's an amazing person. He honestly has helped me in this journey. He's like, he helped me strengthen me and kind of get me. He started the Facebook page, and then he allowed me to be on it. So it's weird to say, but I really look up to him a lot, and I just met him on Facebook. So I've been trying to spread the word a little bit about this and what I feel is a very important topic.
Mhm.
So that's a long introduction, I guess.
Oh, that's great. Can you what is the name of the Facebook page that you help run?
So it's Truth About the Creation for Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
It used to be called Young Earth Creation for Latter-day Saints, but we changed it to the Truth About Creation because people would say, "Oh, I know what you young earthers believe," or something like that. There's sometimes comes to be stigmas, right,
Hmm.
with certain things. So we wanted it to focus on the truth about the creation because it's such an important topic.
Yeah.
Bruce R. McConkie said, I have a quote from him that I really love. I'm gonna have to find it, but he said that we need to understand the creation. I mean, if you think about it, the creation is really just fundamental to our belief, right? It's the very beginning, first thing that happened.
Right.
Let me just read that real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
He said, "The Lord expects us to believe and understand the true doctrine of the creation of this earth, of man, and of all forms of life. Indeed, as we shall see, an understanding of the doctrine of creation is essential to salvation. Unless and until we gain a true view of the creation of all things, we cannot hope to gain that fullness of eternal reward, which otherwise would be ours." And that was a long time ago. Bruce R. McConkie's passed away now for some
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
But when Ammon went in the Book of Mormon and he taught King Lamoni, after King Lamoni asked him if he was the Great Spirit, and he finally had a captive audience. Obviously, he was in awe that he had cut off the arms of the Lamanites, and now he was in front of him. He began to teach him the plan of salvation, and he began at the creation. And that's a lot of times where we begin in teaching the gospel is we like to teach about the creation to those that don't know about it. If we're teaching other Christians, we talk about the restoration.
Hmm.
Another example real quick is to show how important this is, because sometimes people will tell me this doesn't matter. Even my dad will say that, "Jeremy, this doesn't matter." And I say, well, it doesn't matter to some. It really doesn't matter to some. The people that are reading the scriptures regularly and that are praying regularly and studying the gospel, really doesn't matter to them. But there's a lot of people that it does matter to. So I'll give this last example is Nephi and Lehi. Lehi sent his sons into Jerusalem, and they literally risked their lives to do what they did, right? To go back and to get the brass plates. And it was a pretty important thing. They gave all their gold, they gave all their money, and then they were chased out by Laban. And I love what Lehi says, where he thanks the Lord, and he's just so grateful, and he begins to read in the plates, and he says, and he prophesies because he reads such amazing things. But the things that he mentions specifically in there is the genealogy of their fathers, and it teaches of Adam and Eve and the creation. And so that they risk their lives to go back and get those records is pretty important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, like what you were saying, it makes sense that we would start with the creation when teaching someone about the gospel, because I mean, we're here, we're in this world, on this planet, and how did it all get here? It's a good question, and I think it's a good place to start. So I agree with you.
exactly. Yeah. And people are becoming really confused about that. People
Yeah.
believe that the earth is 4 billion years old, or 2.4, whatever it is. It actually changes every couple of years. The age of the earth. Someone did someone did the math, and they said the earth is getting older by like 100 million years every 10 minutes, because it gets older and older.
Oh, really?
Even though, because scientists keep changing their theories on it.
Mhm.
And in the first place, let's pretend you had an honest, true, and there are some great honest scientists out there. There's a lot of them. The problem is a lot of them just buy into the theory of evolution because they believe the evidence is overwhelming. But anyway, let's pretend you have a good scientist out there, and he's trying his best to teach truth. He just can't, because there's so much There's so much evidence or so much support around that scientific community, and they're really well funded. I mean, you're not going to get funded by any government organization. You're not going to get any grants if you go and you say, hey, I want to show that the earth is young. I want to show that dinosaurs lived with man. You're not going to get any funding at all. So it's all self-funded. So, there are, I can't remember what I was going to say about good scientists, but there are some good ones out there.
Yeah. So let's talk about the creation. What can you tell us about the creation, how it happened, and how long it took, and stuff like that?
So interestingly enough, this is the topic I know the least about.
Oh,
I actually don't cover this in my presentation. It's about 217 PowerPoint slides, and I almost cover this zero. I think I have 1 or 2 slides about it because it's very, very, I don't know how long it took to create the earth, but I do know that I believe I'm taking the scriptures literally.
Okay.
As often as I can. So if God said he created the earth in 6 days, hey, there's one of my dinosaur lovers popping up behind me, Cash. He's 4 years old.
Hey, Cash.
Hi, buddy.
How's it going?
He can't hear you.
That's true.
Say hi to him.
Hi. I love dinosaurs too.
What's your favorite dinosaur, buddy? Carnotaur. Carnotaur? He said his favorite's the Carnotaur. Okay, we're going to do this and I'll come out later, bud. Okay? So I think it gets a little dangerous when we start to take the scriptures and say that they're all metaphor and all, because I had someone post on my Facebook page, and I can read you the direct quote. I have it here in my presentation. He said, I believe that the story of Adam and Eve, I personally believe that the biblical account of Adam and Eve is just a story meant to provide a beginning place to explain the fall and set the stage for what followed. So we're getting a lot of people that are starting to discount different stories, like the flood wasn't real, the whole earth couldn't have been flooded, there's not enough water to flood the whole earth. And so they start to say that this is just a story or a regional flood. And we're starting to take science and try to shove it into the scriptures. When we do it the other way around, and we take our scriptures and take them to the quarries and we take them into science, it's unbelievable the discoveries that are made when we literally understand first that God created the earth, he flooded the whole earth, and he created every animal in their sphere and element. And he told them to multiply according to their own kind. Mm-hmm. He didn't say evolve. He said multiply according to your own kind. And so, and what else I found is I found a deeper appreciation for the world around me. I can look at a leaf and be in awe. I can look at a plant growing and say, God made this is amazing. Or we were just doing the ultrasound for my baby that's on the way. And this ultrasound tech was the best I've ever seen. She showed us the spinal cord where the blood flows, the ribs, the heart beating. It was beautiful. Wow. I was like, that is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. Mm-hmm. To see the ventricles of the heart pumping. I mean, it was to see the fingers, the face, the eyes all formed. And I said, there's no way that anything like this evolved. I mean, the spinal cord is so incredible, just running signals from your brain. If I sit here and I move my finger, my brain is sending a signal to my finger for my muscle to move, my tendon, which happens to move my finger exactly where I want. If I want to touch this thing, I look at something, my brain sends a signal. I have to move my finger this many inches over here to touch this thing. I mean, how long would it take a man to program a robot to do something like that? And he could program it to do it one time and it wouldn't duplicate it. And anyway, I could go on, but it just is marvelous, our bodies and our hands. So that's the blessing of understanding the creation. And people that I think God used evolution are shortchanging themselves in that aspect of really enjoying this earth and and the awe-inspiring things we see. Like a peacock feather is the most amazing thing. Some of the bird feathers we see, some of the fish, their colors, and they have no purpose except to be beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And literally it says in the scriptures, like we're studying in Come Follow Me right now in Moses, Moses chapter 6 says, everything testifies of me and glorifies me. Let me just pull that up real quick. I just have to read it. I just love it so much. Because I just read it with my wife yesterday, so it's fresh on my mind, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's as you can tell, I've gotten pretty passionate about this topic, huh?
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I just and I don't think, I'm not going to say that people can't have a testimony of God and still believe in evolution. There are people that do. I've talked to people, for example, at church, and they're like, I believe the earth is millions of years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the dinosaurs, different theories, but they still are doing good, raising good families. And, but then there's other people I've watched. One guy shared an ex-Mormon story where his wife was studying biology in college. And he in his video on YouTube, he showed a picture of a dinosaur skeleton and evolution, and they left the church, and now they don't know what they believe. It seems like they went atheists. And so that's happening as well. And so that's why I say it does matter.
Yeah.
It's harder for me to find the scripture on my phone because I read it in my other scriptures. Oh, here it is. Behold, all things have their likeness, and all things are created and made to bear record of me. Both things which are temporal and things which are spiritual, things which are in the heavens above and things which are on the earth, and things which are in the earth and things which are under the earth, both above and beneath. All things bear record of me. And so, I don't know, this is a side topic, but there's some books about people that have died and passed on and come back to life, and they've heard the rocks. They've like felt rocks, or it's kind of weird, but they like could understand, go inside of that like this one guy, he went inside of a bench and he knew that the bench was made from a tree, but and the bench was happy to be the tree was happy to be made into a bench. It's kind of seems a little weird, but
Interesting.
but it kind of makes sense when all things testify of God, or all things point to his glory.
Yeah.
Because he is the creator, and so as the creator, they're grateful to be created.
Right. Wow, that's interesting. So, do you think that based on the scriptures, do you think that each of the creation days was 24 hours? Or do you think it could be longer, or what do you think?
I guess I would answer that and say, is there any like scriptural evidence or doctrinal evidence that teaches us otherwise? And I don't want to get into a ton of debates with people if I'm not really well prepared. And that's why I don't go into this topic. And we're not debating here, of course. But
Right.
so the only scriptural evidence I know is that God said 1,000 years to him is one day, or sorry, 1,000 years to us is one day to God on the planet which he dwells, right? So that could give credence to the idea that it took him 6,000 years to create the earth. But there nowhere in scripture does it ever say millions anywhere, or billions. Nowhere does it say that. And if you study, a lot of people have studied the Hebrew word for day, which is yom, Y-O-M. And they've looked at it in other biblical, they're looking at it when God mentions days in other scripture references. And they say it's the same day, 24-hour day. Other people will argue that there was no day yet because the sun wasn't even created. So how do you, I saw someone post that, some atheist trying to make a debate recently. I thought that was kind of funny. But the thing is, Moses wrote the book, right? Moses was inspired to write the book of Genesis. And so, and he also wrote the book of Moses, or Joseph Smith translated it. And so I would say, once again, that I would like to take the scriptures as literal as possible, unless there's something else really compelling otherwise.
Yeah.
And radiometric dating is not compelling. It isn't. It's so far off. I mean, they are testing things and they're off all the time. And the thing about the radiometric and carbon dating, first of all, only goes back about 50,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
What they're using for long-term dating is radiometric dating. How can you honestly think, and I'd love to trust it, but how can you think there's any test that can tell us how old a rock is? You know, it's like you pick up a rock and you're like, this rock here, or this, and they're not even testing the rocks, not the rocks, but the uranium and things. They're not even testing them anymore because they've already made the decision that this layer is 200 million years old. The Cretaceous is so old, these different layers. And so if they find a bone in the layer, they now label the bone that age. It's essentially become where it's like circular reasoning, where you say, well, why is the dinosaur bone this old? Well, it's because it was found in this layer. And why is the layer this old? Well, it's because the dinosaur bone, and I can't explain it very well, but I read it in Robert Wright's book, The Token of the Bow.
Uh-huh.
And he explains the circular reasoning very well. But
Gotcha. Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So, so I would say I lean towards it was created in 24-hour periods. And the other question I would ask people is God capable of creating the earth in 6 days, 6 literal earth days? And, you know, if they answer yes, I say, well, why didn't he then? You know, and I think the only reason someone would think that he didn't do it in 6 literal days is because of the evolution that's being taught. And because of the old earth, based on the theories that have been passed on and added upon and grown upon long before Darwin. Actually, there's quite a few people that want to take this away from God. And if you study these lives, I read a book recently that studies the lives of Huxley and Darwin and some of these other guys, and why what their lives were like and why they wanted to step away from God. They wanted to justify their lives a little bit, you know. So the sins and things that they were doing, otherwise they would had to been held accountable. They'd feel guilty. But sorry, yeah,
Okay.
So I don't cover that 24-hour as much as some people.
Yeah, that's fine. So speaking of the radiocarbon dating, how old do you think the Earth is now? I mean, obviously it could be 6,000 years plus however much time has happened since the creation, but I guess I'm asking, how much time do you think has happened since everything was created?
So I follow the I guess we'll say the term young Earth creation timeline. I believe that the Earth is roughly what the Bible says it is, and that is, you know, give or take 6,000 years. But I don't know entirely. I don't know how long Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden. I mean, there's really no record on that. Were Adam and Eve sitting around in the Garden of Eden for 10,000 years or 5,000 years or 5 million years? It seems wasteful to me that they would have done something like that. The scriptures don't tell us, and I'm okay not knowing. You know, Adam, how long was Adam alone before Eve came along? I mean, it says in the scriptures that he named all of the animals before Eve came.
Mm.
So he had a pretty big job to name thousands and millions, tens of thousands of animals to name them. So,
It's true.
but he didn't have to garden or farm or do much else. So I don't know the point in him wasting time sitting around in the garden. Aside from that, once he left the garden, the timeline essentially starts for his age.
Mm.
Death starts. Um, I mean, before that, God created the earth from scratch. So, I mean, I don't see any other gaps of time that we could fill in other than what the Bible tells us. And they give a really clear genealogy um, of the ages of everybody. So I'd say
Gotcha.
6,000 years.
Yeah.
Final answer.
Cool. Makes sense. Okay, well, let's talk about dinosaurs then. I'm excited to hear what you found about dinosaurs. I know that in a couple of days you have a presentation about this, about dinosaurs in the scriptures. Um, and I'd love to hear some of the things that you found. What can you share with us about that?
Yeah, I'm excited. So quickly about the presentation is I did this a year ago because like I told you, I was telling everybody I was so excited, but
Uh-huh.
I didn't want to tell my friends and family because they were starting to think I was really weird. They're like, they didn't want to really, and I realized I couldn't tell people in a sit down conversation. And I even told one of my really good friends, like his wife and other people, I was like, and it started to get where they would argue with me. They're like, I believe in evolution and things like that. I was like, I don't want to argue. That defeats the whole purpose. The
Yeah.
purpose is to build faith, and I don't want to argue with people. So I need to do it in a full presentation format where I can lay down the evidences, and then they can decide at the end. And then I don't have to say anything else. I said, hey, I've said my piece. I've showed you the evidence, pictures, videos, and now you decide.
Mhm.
Um, so I did that a year ago. I did Facebook ads and I invited random people. And then this year I wanted to do it with family and friends. So I've invited those on Facebook and personally, and we're meeting at Meridian Tidal in Midvale at 6:30 p.m. on the 20th of January. So um, more people are invited. First of all, I'm going to tell you that. Um, so dinosaur bones are an interesting thing um, because, well, I'm trying to figure out where to start because there's so much. Let me start with uh, with Behemoth in the Old Testament.
Okay.
Let me start with so Behemoth is mentioned in the Old Testament, the book of Job. And what is a behemoth? People say behemoth is something that's huge, something that's large. It's an expression that we use sometimes. And Job, if you read chapters 37 and 8, I think it starts in 35, where the Lord is chastening Job. He's kind of humbling him. He's kind of like if you ever had a dad take his teenager, set him down and say, son, who pays the bills around here? You want to borrow the family car, who pays the bills. That's what God, in my mind, is doing to Job. He says to him, where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Where were you, Job, when I created everything? And he goes on to does the same thing. Where were you when I created the lion, the raven, the goats, the wild ass, the unicorn, the peacock, the horse? So he lists all these animals, and then he lists behemoth. And we're like, well, what on earth is a behemoth, right?
Yeah.
And it lists, it talks about his bones are like brass. He's the greatest and the chief. His tail moves like a cedar. He has a huge navel of his belly. This is just a massive animal, right? He
Right.
lieth under the shady trees, lives in the swamps, which actually, once again, goes into why, if we use the scriptures, we can learn more about dinosaurs because it explains the behavior, where they live. So some people said, and some of the other translations of the Bible, they have a lot of weird translations of the Bible. I haven't read them all, where they're like New English and modern, and I don't know if they have one in hipster yet. But some of them say in the footnotes that it's an elephant. and it's a hippo because that's the biggest land animal now on Earth, right?
Yeah.
But we'll talk about living dinosaurs maybe if we have time.
Hmm.
Um, but this one says its tail is like a cedar tree, and if you look closely at an elephant tail, it's quite a little dangly thing, little little or if a hippo tail or any of these tails. This is a cedar tree, a tree tail. I mean, and he's the chief, and so he's a big animal, and I believe that is a sauropod dinosaur. So behemoth is the first thing, and then go
Sorry,
ahead.
a sauropod would be one of those long-necked dinosaurs, right?
Right, like a long-necked, four-legged brachiosaurus or a
Gotcha.
diplodocus or something like that.
Cool.
Right, yeah. And then verse 41, he talks about a leviathan that lives in the waters, boils the waters. He talks about his scales are shut up together and no spear can pierce it. Talks about, this is interesting, talks about his sneezings, a light does shine. And out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks. So out of his nostrils goeth smoke. As out of a seething pot or cauldron, his breath kindleth coals. So we have a lot of legends of fire-breathing dragons, right?
Right.
And I've always wondered, where do the legends of dragons come from? And I believe that 90% of legends have some truth behind them. For example, the Thunderbird, the Native American Thunderbird, there's a Ford car that's a Thunderbird. I believe there was a real Thunderbird. And I believe it was a living pterodactyl or pterosaur flying around. And there's actually pictures online. Just Google, I hate to say Google, but just go search online for something like a living pterodactyl or something, or a killed pterodactyl. And there's a few pictures of one in the Civil War time. There's a few guys hung them on a barn, and there's about 20 people that say they're all hoaxes. And I believe they probably are, a couple of them, but there's 3 or 4 of them. Maybe one of them was real. I don't know. So anyway, it's interesting because, and I didn't want to get into the live dinosaur thing quickly, but if you go to the Loch Ness Monster website, there's over 1,100 sightings of the Loch Ness Monster.
Wow.
And there's probably 950 of them are fake, right? They heard a story, they went there and they saw a log a mile away and they're like, oh, that's it. Or they saw a boat wake. But what if one of them was correct? What if one of them saw it out of the 1,100? Just something to think about.
Yeah.
There's lake monster sightings in 10 or 15 lakes around the world. The Loch Ness one is the most popular. There's Lake Magog, I think is what it's called in Canada. There's Lake Champlain, they call their monster Champ. They have a billboard right next to the lake that has, I don't know if it's 150 sightings of it. They put the date and the name of the person that saw it in Lake Champlain near Vermont, I think. And there's another one up in Canada called Lake Okanagan. These are just off the top of my head. They call their monster. Oh, you've been there?
Yeah.
They call their monster Ogopogo. Have you heard of it?
No. Interesting.
Okay. I met a kid recently and he showed me videos of it.
Uh-huh.
And he showed me 4 videos of this movement in the water and something kind of there. And I couldn't see it very well. And then he told me one time he saw its neck come up out of the water, but he didn't get a video of it. And I'm like, oh, it's always when you get the good evidence.
Yeah.
There is one really good picture of the Lake Champlain monster. Let me show it to you. It's called the Mancy photo. And it is, they've interviewed her about it. And one guy that interviewed her, he said, a lot of people say you just saw a duck. Did you just see a duck? And she said, if it was a 2,000-pound duck, So if you can see here, this is the picture she took.
Yeah.
So you can see it's something turned, and she says it had extremely sensitive hearing. She said it went underwater, and then about a minute, 30 seconds to a minute later, she heard a boat. But she didn't hear the boat first. It heard it and went gone. It was gone. So she said it had very sensitive hearing, extremely sensitive,
Wow.
which is kind of interesting. This is a picture of her holding her picture and testifying or something that she, anyway, let me, so anyway, there's also, now that we're on the topic, you got me going.
That's good. Keep going.
There's sightings. There's a lot of sightings. I mean, there's some interesting stuff out there when we have a different perspective of the world.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things to be discovered when we don't believe some of these theories. So they found footprints of a sauropod dinosaur in the Congo jungles. Ever since about 1910, and they call him Mokele Mbembe. Let me just pull up my PowerPoint here. But if you've heard of the movie The Lost World, Jurassic Park.
Yes.
So that movie is based on a book of some sightings in the Congo jungle. And then the movie was made, I think, in the 1930s or 40s called The Lost World, about a dinosaur. And it's all based on the local pygmies talking about this creature in the Congo jungle that they've seen. And it's broken their boats. It's even killed people. They know what plant it eats. They know that when there's no hippos and crocodiles, that's usually where it lives. There's this guy here who's gone over multiple times. He's a Frenchman, and he's gotten pictures of the footprints in the sand.
Wow.
And and for whatever reason, getting a picture of these things is ridiculous because they say that the flies and the swamp, it's miserable. Like even getting back into the area in this African jungle takes 3 days on a Jeep, and you get stuck in the mud half the time on these horrible dirt roads. And then you have to get on a boat and go another day, 10 hours upriver on this little wooden canoe. And there's no hotels or anything, it's
right.
And then once you're in there, there's swarms of mosquitoes and flies all over you. So it's pretty miserable is what I've been told getting in there. And then by the time you're in there, you have to come home and go to work. But I've heard some interesting stories. I won't go into them all about this place. I met a guy that heard the noise that it makes. I met another guy that was on the canoe when the guide in the front saw it.
Uh-huh.
And by the time the canoe, it's kind of annoying to tell these stories because it's like, why didn't you see it? Why didn't you get a picture of it? But he said by the time the canoe came through the forest, because they were, whatever, the two guides were in the front, they were in the back. The guide saw, he said, there it is, there's its head. And it was underwater, but its head was sticking up. And as soon as they got around, it was gone underwater or whatever. Anyway, all these different stories.
So I'm looking at this picture that you're showing. Is that footprint's in the sand? It's not like a fossilized rock. Is that right?
That is definitely, yeah, it's a fresh sand footprint. It's not fossilized.
Gotcha.
That's sandy, gravelly. And people say, well, it's an elephant, it's a hippo or something, but there are elephants that live in the jungles there, jungle elephants, quite a few of them. Mm-hmm. But the elephants don't have a pokey claw. So this one has like a claw on the front of it. It's a three-toed.
Yeah.
And then plus there's the locals. They know it's there and they're very afraid of it. Even though it's herbivore, they know that it eats the malumbo plant, which is a flower. And they've seen the vegetation gone where it eats really high up, 15, 18 feet up. But the locals have a lot of superstition and they're afraid of it, so they won't go near it. But and people say, well, don't believe the locals. I mean, they don't say that, but scientists kind of come out and they're like, oh, they're uneducated little pygmies out in the jungle. But you have to understand that the pygmies knew about a lot of animals long before scientists did. This one is here is called the okapi. It looks like a giraffe mixed with a zebra. It's like a
Yeah.
short giraffe with stripes on its back. And scientists didn't believe it existed. Um, and I think it was in 1905, someone finally brought home a cape of it, and then they believed them because they kept telling them we have a giraffe here that looks like a zebra, and the scientists didn't believe them. The other one was the jungle gorillas. They said we have hairy man-like animals in the jungle. Nobody believed them until 1901. They brought a skull out,
Wow.
and so I mean, there's scientific discoveries that are still taking place. Sometimes we think that we've discovered the whole world and we've figured it all out, but it's pretty interesting what could still be out there. The Congo jungle's massive. I mean, it's as big as Texas and
Wow.
very, very unexplored. So um, that's the living dinosaur. I don't think it would disprove evolution per se, um, but the evolutionists might say, oh, they somehow survived through extinction or something to that effect. I'm sure they'd come up with something, but um, based on what I believe, it would very much disprove evolution.
Gotcha.
Here's a couple pictures of some giant pterodactyl-like creatures that were killed and hung on a barn.
Wow.
Uh,
So do you think these are real? Or you said some of them might be fakes. What do you think about
one,
these ones?
so there's one Civil War one I didn't post here. It's even bigger than these ones. I mean,
Uh-huh.
if you look at these guys here, this one on the barn, it's about 8 feet wide wingspan. This one here is probably 10 or 12, based on the size of the men standing next to it. I mean, it's taking what, 5 men to hold up, 2 men on each wing and one
Yeah.
guy in the middle to hold it up. But I'm seeing veins in the wings. I'm seeing no feathers or fur of any kind. Um, and I don't understand why someone would want to make a hoax and how they would make a hoax at this time period anyway. Like maybe they got bored and it was fun. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not an expert on photography or things like that. All I know is that I believe that there were dinosaurs, and the dinosaurs were dragons in our time. And I can kind of go into that a little bit, but I'd like to talk about the flood. I think that was one of the things we were going to talk about was um,
Yeah.
why would there be dinosaurs? How would they have survived this long?
Right.
And I mean, I believe dinosaurs were essentially dragons because there's dragon legends in every country in the world, from Europe to South America, Asia, Africa. I mean, and these continents back then were very, very separated by distance and technology. They didn't have it, right?
Hmm.
And yet they all share a dragon legend. And so really, really interesting. The dragons. Um, Let me just go into a few of the dragons. St. George, for example, was a famous dragon slayer in Europe. He has statues in cathedrals. He has statues in town halls. He's got murals all over. St. George is a very famous guy. I mean, he is, because he slayed a dragon that was eating the people's sheep, eating their. I mean, I think at one point they had to feed it. They were ready to feed the princess to her, and so there's quite a few dragon stories in Europe.
Wow. So do you think so these legends of dragons, do they always involve like fire breathing dragons, or do some of the stories leave out the fire breathing part?
Yeah, so the fire breathing is an interesting thing because we just mentioned that one scripture that talked about something related to fire breathing.
Yeah.
Do I believe that they came and they breathed out a big, huge flame like in the movies and could burn a house down? No, not really. I believe there's definitely been some things twisted in time, but I mean, there are some very venomous and poisonous snakes, and even the Komodo dragon has his saliva is venomous. I don't know if it's because of that or if it's because they actually could shoot out some sort of acid out of their mouth. We know that if you watch the first Jurassic Park, the Dilophosaurus, he has those frills that come out, and he goes, and he kind of hisses and he shoots out this acid at the
Yeah.
guy
Yeah.
and it blinds him.
That
And
part
so,
terrified me as a kid.
you're right. Yeah. Um, so we know that they had some capability. If you look at a Parasaurolophus, it had this huge horn above its head, and the scientists believe it was full of air, and it made it so it could make a really loud noise to call for safety or whatever. Um, Sometimes I think it could have potentially had some sort of maybe it was a defense mechanism. Maybe it was filled with some sort of an acid and it spit it out. There's a beetle called the bombardier beetle. It's still around and it blows a fiery acid. It mixes two chemicals out and it will spray it at an enemy when it's under attack, kind of like a skunk, right?
Mm-hmm.
A skunk sprays out a nasty, nasty smell, but somehow a skunk can live around it.
Right.
But the bombardier beetle, they estimate that the temperature of its spray, it's an acid, but it comes out to be over 200 and something degrees.
Oh, dang.
It'll really burn you. So what were they capable of? What were these serpents capable of? I don't know. But I don't think that they breathed fire, real fire,
Okay.
in my opinion. I think it might have been some sort of a acid or some sort of a chemical, is my
Right.
opinion.
That makes sense.
And then it obviously legend gets passed on. And so here, that picture was Westminster Abbey, Stockholm Cathedral, statues of St. George. He was famous. There's stories of Tristan who slayed the dragon in Sweden. There's so many dragon stories. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Krakow, Poland. There's a whole story about this guy, this dragon living under the castle. He went and put out a proclamation to see who was brave enough to slay this dragon because it was eating a sheep. And this poor peasant came and finally slayed the dragon and was going to win the daughter. And so these amazing stories of castles and princesses have grown and developed. And dragons, I mean, if you think about the number of dragon movies and books we have to this day, it's unbelievable. Like How to Train a Dragon. I'm trying to find my thing here of a picture of all the stories and books we have of dragons in our day and age. And to think that these came out of thin air to me, is ridiculous. There's a scientist named, I think it was Carl Sagan, a big evolutionary scientist who wrote a book, and I read part of it, and it made me just want to just laugh or vomit or something. I don't know. He said that the reason that we believe in dragons is because evolutionarily, when we were apes were afraid of three things in the jungle. They were afraid of snakes in the jungle, they were afraid of panthers, and they were afraid of, I'm trying to remember the third one. Oh, things that fly like hawks or something. And so evolutionarily in our biology, we remember that. We're afraid of snakes. And now as humans, we're afraid of dragons because we put those three things together and created dragons in our mind that's passed on through us from apes, primates to humans. And that's why we have all these dragon legends. I'm like, can you come up with anything more ridiculous? And then I watched another video of a guy in England who showed why we have dragon legends. And he showed a bunch of rocks. He showed a tree. He said, this rock formation could kind of look like a dragon. See this rock on the ground? It could kind of look like a dragon. See this, I don't know. He almost went to look at the clouds and say, oh, we dreamed of dragons from the clouds. And I was amazed at what people will come up with. And we're even going to outer space to the aliens to try to explain the pyramids because we can't explain how the pyramids were created on Earth because we believe that everyone before our civilizations, before the Bronze Age, were cavemen. And they weren't civilized enough to create pyramids. How could they have done it? And they're starting to say, did the aliens create the pyramids? It's just laughable to me. So that's why. So here's a dictionary that said dragons are now rare. And I have this dictionary in my possession.
When was it published?
Everyone always asks that, and it blows their mind. It was published in 1946.
What? Where?
So,
Like who
so
published it? Do you know?
I think it's a Webster. I don't
Oh,
have it right next to me. I'd have to go grab it and see about, but I think it's a Webster's dictionary. There is a long-necked dinosaur. So let's see. Here's we were talking about dragons, right?
yeah.
So here's a new one that I haven't shared with anyone. And I'm kind of debating whether or not to share it because my uncle is over the temple department. He's literally over building all the temples of the world.
Wow.
So he meets with the prophet every week. And I mean, this doesn't necessarily pertain to him per se, but I was talking to a friend one time about the dragons and dinosaurs, and he said, "Did you know the Manti Temple has some long neck dinosaurs in it on the mural, the creation mural?"
Yeah.
I said, "You're kidding me!" And it was during the pandemic, so the temples were, I think, mostly closed at the time. But my dad happened to be going down for my nephew's endowment because he was going on a mission. And I said, "Dad, will you go look and tell me what you find?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll go look for you." So he texts me and he said, "There's four." I can't remember. I have to read the text, but he said there's 3 or 4 long-necked dinosaurs and 2 pterodactyls. So recently they were remodeling the Manti Temple. So I text my uncle. I'm like, "Hey, are they going to save the murals?" And I didn't know this, but there was a huge group forming that said, like, to save the murals. Everyone in Manti was forming this thing. I don't. It was like a little thing, and I was like, I had to explain to my uncle, I'm not a part of this group. I'm just curious because I know there's some dinosaurs that are mentioned on there.
Mm,
I asked him, "Is this on the mural?" And he said it is. So, but
yeah.
he doesn't necessarily agree with um, what I'm teaching. I wouldn't say he disagrees, but I don't think he knows yet the whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just so. I mean, there's so many stories about dragons. I could go on for like hours. Like, let me just let me try to do a couple of other dragons that are really. And the reason we're talking about dragons is because dinosaurs, I believe, were dragons,
hmm
and that they did live with man, and they were around, and we didn't know how to explain them because the word dinosaur is a new word. If you were to ask someone 1,000 years ago, if they had a computer or a cell iPhone, what would they say, right? Uh,
What are you talking about?
what's a computer? I
Yeah.
mean, what's a camera? They wouldn't even know what a radio was. And so the word dinosaur is also new. It was coined in 1841. It's by Sir, what's his name? It's a new word. Dinosaurs. Um, shoot, I need to get on my stuff here. Um, in 1841 is when they came up with the term terrible lizard, right?
Right.
And so if 500 years ago you had seen something that was a scary reptile that was living in a cave or whatnot, or terrorizing the town, eating your sheep at night, first of all, you're going to go and kill it as fast as you can, and you're going to eradicate these things. Back then, they didn't have animal rights activists, I don't believe. And, they were trying to survive. And the
Yeah.
farmers, even today, farmers, if there's a coyote or wolf taking out the sheep, they're going to go take it out. If the deer are eating their corn, they're going to kill them. In Texas, they slaughter the hogs because they're eating all their corn. They have a hog problem. They're constantly out there shooting them. So people are going to hunt down these dragons or dinosaurs. The people that kill them are going to be heroes. There's going to be some that are big and some that are small. We could get into the sizes of dinosaurs, why the dinosaurs were so big. And I believe that they were smaller after the flood. People lived longer before the flood. They lived 900 years. And I believe reptiles would have also lived longer, and reptiles never stopped growing for their entire lives. So, and there's other theories and other reasons why as well. The dinosaurs that are fossilized would have been much larger than maybe the dinosaurs that lived with man after the flood. And why they died off so quickly, because the climate would have changed, I believe, after the flood of Noah.
Okay. So you're saying that the dinosaurs, so it's like take T-Rex for example. T-Rex got so big because they were allowed to live long lives. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that is one theory. Another,
Okay.
yeah, that is an idea I have. I mean, I don't have a lot to back it up, but I know that reptiles live their whole lives. There's some other information about the atmosphere and how it was different before the flood,
Okay.
which is what, there's got to be a reason why Noah and Methuselah could live, over 900 years.
Right.
There was something different on the earth. In addition, there was no rainbows before the flood of Noah. So we know that something was different on the earth
Gotcha.
because God introduced the rainbow. This book here called Dire Dragons, Untold Secret of the Planet Earth. Dire Dragons is a comparison side by side of dragons and dinosaurs. He draws the dragons and says this probably was this type of dinosaur. Then he draws a different dragon and says this was probably this type of dinosaur.
Oh, interesting.
So there's a lot of people doing some research on it. And this one here, for example, this picture of this dragon slayer, he's fighting this ferocious dragon with a long tail. If it was to stand upright and it didn't have wings, it looks very much like a Tyrannosaurus, a small T-Rex or a raptor to me. So these drawings,
Yeah.
and there's dragons all over the country. So let's get into maybe, or if you want, we can get into some of the, what happened to all the dinosaurs.
Yeah, I am curious. Where are they now? Like what happened to them? Or so I guess um if you look in a science textbook, they'd say that the dinosaurs went extinct with an asteroid, right? Like 65 million years ago. Um, and obviously we don't have T-Rex running around today. So what happened to the dinosaurs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about the flood and things. And so there's a lot of evidence for a worldwide flood. And so I believe the dinosaurs, and there's overwhelming evidence to show that they were buried in a flood. Because how does an animal fossilize in the first place, right? If you go and shoot a deer, my family does a lot of deer hunting and elk hunting. If you shoot a deer in the mountains or a cow dies, and you come back 1,000 years later, will it be fossilized? And the answer is no, right? Like you'll come back, I've come back the year after, I've seen dead, decaying deer many times and cows. So the fossilization process is where the minerals replace the bone. But in order to avoid scavenging, these bones have to be preserved. And in many of these cases, they are buried rapidly by sediment. So there's huge fossil finds in Canada of over 1,000 centrosaurs, all buried in one graveyard, massive graveyard together. And here it is, 7 kilometers wide with these centrosaurs. And so it's interesting because you look it up online and the scientists say, well, they were crossing this river and they all drowned and they all got fossilized in the bottom. But every time you look at how a dinosaur died, most of the time it says flood. Here's one that says, this was fighting for its life in a flood the moments before it died. The animal might have fallen into a ditch or stumbled into boggy ground. Okay, on this one, here's a very well intact ankylosaurus. And it says, until a flooded river swept it into the open sea. So they believe it died in the river, then it got swept out by a flood. Time and time again, you'll see that they were swiftly buried rapidly by sediment. And that's the only way, really, these things could get fossilized. Here's another one. We're swiftly buried in mud due to violent shaking of their home. I mean, it's just amazing when you start looking at it through this perspective, how the nuggets just start sticking out all over the place. Here's another scientist that said, as we brushed back the sediment, well-preserved white bones appeared. The skeletons, still arranged as they had been in life, looked as if they had been resting peacefully for millions of years. That funny part there. We guessed that the creatures had been buried in minutes, perhaps by a flash flood of an ancient river. So here, fossilization, here again, it's clear that dinosaurs' remains were rapidly buried before substantial scavenging could take place. There's another graveyard in China, huge dinosaur graveyard. They're here in Utah. Vernal, you live right next to one.
I do,
right?
yeah. I've been there.
Yeah, you've been there. You've seen the wall of dinosaur bones,
Yeah.
and they're all mixed in together.
Yeah.
Carnivores and herbivores, and I think the Camarasaurus is really big over there, and maybe some Allosaurus, right?
Yep.
And I asked the scientists there, or the rangers, I said, how did this happen? You know, I'm curious. This might have been before I knew about this, actually. And they said, oh, there was a river and all the bones floated down the river and they all gathered here. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, cool. And I kind of went on my way.
Mm-hmm.
But this is happening all over the world, and they're in the same mud layer. I mean, all the way from Canada down to southern Utah. I mean, this was a massive catastrophic event, and the evidence is everywhere. And that's why I start laughing when I hear people talk about this evolution. Anyway, here's another fossilization clip here. It says, the chance an animal will become fossilized is 1 in a million.
Wow.
This number is meant to be figuratively, the point being that the odds of surviving the rivers of deep time are extremely remote. Fossilization doesn't happen every day. It's not this common occurrence that happens when your dog dies and you bury him in the backyard, right?
Right.
And they say, well, you need more time. Oh, just give it more time. And to me, that's what Star Wars did. Star Wars said a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then they created any story they wanted, right? And if you say a long time ago that something happened, you can make up anything you want. Well, how did it happen? Well, it just took a really long time. It's a fairy tale, if you ask me. So they were buried so rapidly that fish were buried with other fish in their mouths.
Wow.
They couldn't even have time to finish their dinner. This was like a massive, massive worldwide catastrophe, and the evidence is everywhere. Here's yours in Vernal.
Yeah.
Picture of it. Here's one in China, a wall of bones. There's one in Madagascar. The guy in China said these dinosaurs might have lived along riverbanks and died during natural disasters. As the rivers bearing their remains slowly merged into larger lakes, the bones, it says here, gradually were preserved, but I crossed those words out. Bones were as fossils over millions of years. I crossed that out too, but because we believe a fossil can take a lot less time than maybe you think. In addition, these dinosaurs are buried, a lot of them, with the neck in a backward arch. And this is a suffocation. This is they're dying from drowning, essentially. They're choking for air. And this is time and time again what we're finding. So let me go back real quick to a slide I have and a really interesting clip about the Hell Creek Formation of Montana, where they're also finding a lot of bones in Wyoming.
Okay. Yeah, before you do that, I just have a question.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, not every animal that dies will be fossilized. They kind of have to be buried by sediment really quickly. And so when I first think of the flood, usually I'm just thinking of like a ton of water. But you're saying that the flood would have, because it was so much water and so catastrophous, if that's a word, it wasn't just water.
Catastrophic.
Catastrophic. Thank you. It wasn't just water. It would have been pushing dirt and mud around, right? And so that's how they all got buried. Is that correct?
Right. So during this time, there was a lot going on in the earth. So it says in the Bible that God opened up the fountains of the deep. So I don't know exactly what that means, and I don't know exactly what happened. But what I do know is that when Mount St. Helens erupted, it it did immense amount of damage. It destroyed hundreds and hundreds of square miles of forests in minutes because they had the pyroclastic flows of lava and what they call these massive bursts where it explodes. And so, as a matter of fact, Mount St. Helens laid down 45 layers, 45 feet of layered sediments in 2 weeks. So these layers were laid down very rapidly. So that's Mount St. Helens is a really good example of what can happen, what's possible to bury things. And so we could go into the layers of the earth. But we believe, and there may have been some plate tectonics, and the earth may have been moving underneath the floodwaters. I like to think of it kind of like a bathtub. Things were swishing around like crazy. I mean, it was not a fun ride on Noah's Ark, I don't believe. I think it was quite a ride.
Right.
And so what it was doing was it was causing, as the floodwaters were rising, it was causing these flows to come up onto the land, and the dinosaurs were congregating and essentially running from these floodwaters. Once they got to high ground, eventually something, whether it was tsunamis, massive tsunamis, and finally pushing the sediments up, burying them, and when the waters receded, the sediments remained, and there was nothing left to scavenge. Is the way I picture it happening. And that's the way creation scientists, there are creation scientists who study this sort of thing, believe it happened. But of course, we don't know everything. But the interesting thing is, even with the K2 extinction event that the scientists, secular scientists tout and believe is what happened, the asteroid that hit off of the Yucatan Peninsula, even that shows floodwaters. From when the asteroid hit, it caused the water to spread all over. So it's very interesting. But we know in the Book of Mormon in 3rd Nephi that cities were buried. Some cities were sunk in the ocean. Other cities, a mountain came up in its stead. So we know that it's possible to have these massive events. But the scientists like to think that the Earth has been doing this like slow thing for millions of years and nothing changes, but really slowly. And the plate tectonics move at an inch a time, an inch a year or whatever. And that's what they're doing right now. And we know that, we can observe that. Science has to be observable, testable, and provable. So I agree with scientists now that say that our plate tectonics are moving an inch a year. I absolutely agree because they can see that. But when they start going into the future or into the past and trying to predict the future or tell us what happened in the past, that's when they have to make assumptions and guesses. And that's when I have a pickle to pick with those scientists.
Yeah. It's hard to observe the past. So that makes sense.
Very hard, yeah. And here's my little table about science. Since science has to be observable, I forgot one that has to be repeatable and falsifiable.
Nice.
It's really exciting when you start to see what happened on the earth and to see, and when you read it in the scriptures, because in the Book of Mormon it even says that the land of promise was the promised land since the time the floodwaters were lifted off of it. And you're like, oh, that's really interesting. You know, does that mean that the Earth was moving around? The plate tectonics were going on while Noah was floating on the surface? You know, maybe it does. And maybe it separated America at that time. And maybe it was all one massive continent at the beginning. So it just makes you think, but there is evidence in the scriptures for these things. And that's what's exciting to me.
Yeah.
Good question. I did want to share real quick and go back to share one thing that I think is really important. And that is the Hell Creek Formation in Montana. Because this is a topic we haven't even brought up, but the paleontologist is the most famous paleontologist, I would say, in the world, because he consulted on the Jurassic Park movies. He's just really, really famous, and he's kind of a funny guy. He went on a TED Talk, and he said that dinosaurs, he wants to make his own Chickenosaurus. And I'm actually forgetting his name, which is pretty funny, but because in all the information I'm spouting out, but
I think it's Jack Horner.
Jack Horner, thank you.
Yeah.
Jack Horner. So his assistant at the time, and now she's a full-fledged paleontologist, is Dr. Schweitzer, but they found the Hell Creek Formation in Montana. And he said all the Hell Creek bones smell. They smell of death. And in Madagascar, they have a huge bone find or quarry where they find the bones and they're light and white, like a cow bone almost. And they talk as if they're not even fossilized, which is really interesting. So these bones in Montana, they had to cut the bone to transport it. And she took a slice of it and she soaked it in acid for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, she stuck it under a microscope and she saw some red round things. Have you heard of this before?
I have, but I don't know a ton about it, so I'm excited.
Yeah. So she, can I play the video? We probably don't have time, but there's a 60-minute episode on it.
Okay. Looks like it's like 2 minutes long. You could play it. See
Okay,
if it works.
Yeah, this is really interesting. She finds, and I say red brown things because at first they don't want to say what it is.
Right.
And because they're so astounded, because based on evolution, based on their paradigm and their worldview, and I would say their science, the Earth is millions and billions of years old. There cannot possibly be blood cells, soft tissue, or anything in these bones. It's been too long. Mm-hmm. It's impossible. And you'll hear her say that. I'm just prefacing the video. You'll hear her say that in the video. This is impossible. So I just have to toot my horn real quick and say that that's what the problem in science with this theory.
What happened next happened by mistake. Mary put some fragments of the bone in acid to dissolve away the outermost layer of mineral. But the acid worked too fast and all the mineral dissolved away. Being a fossil, there should have been nothing left. But there was. And it was elastic, like living tissue.
This is the piece.
No. She showed us video she took under the microscope.
That's really what happened?
Yes.
That's the dinosaur bone?
Without mineral now. That's what was left.
It looked like the soft tissue she would have expected to find if it had been modern bone. This was impossible.
So since obviously it's a video and everyone can't see, I'll just say they're pulling on a microscope with tweezers, and this is like a rubbery, soft, squishy. I mean, they're pulling on it, right? And it's going back to its form. So kind of interesting.
That's crazy.
They're just amazing. I'll keep playing.
This bone was 68 million years old.
So you see this and you think, what?
I didn't want to tell anybody.
You'd be ridiculed, right?
And so I said to my technician, okay, do it again. I don't believe it.
And yet, in sample after sample, they were there. Things that looked suspiciously like flexible, transparent blood vessels. She finally mustered the courage to tell Jack.
She said she dissolved the bone away and there were blood vessels. And, I was like, shocked. I mean,
How could that be?
How could that be? That's right.
The things Mary was finding inside dinosaur bones,
Look at that.
blood vessels, and even what seemed to be intact cells, pose a radical challenge to the existing rules of science, that organic material can't possibly survive even 1,000,000 years, let alone 68 million. Mary, Jack, and their team published their B-Rex findings in a series of papers in the journal Science and were promptly attacked. Critics said their samples might have been contaminated, or that the supposed blood vessels were actually something called biofilm, a type of slime. But as Mary showed us, she's been able to replicate her findings. These are pieces of an even older dinosaur, a well-preserved 80-million-year-old duckbill. When she dissolved it away in acid,
Let's put this under the scope here.
well, look.
Is that a blood
This
vessel?
is a blood vessel.
You're
You see
kidding.
the branches right there? And look at all of them. And it's so consistent over and over and over again. We do this bone and it comes out and I get excited every time. I can't help it. I mean, 80 million years old.
Mary published her new results last year, and while some of her critics have been swayed, the controversy still rages, and the stakes are high. If blood vessels can survive 80 million years, what about DNA?
So it just makes me laugh when they say 80 million years old. Isn't that amazing? Right? I mean, when from my paradigm, I think it's ridiculous. They don't catch on and say, maybe it's not 80 million years old. Did we do something wrong? Could we check that? But they don't even think of checking their paradigm or checking the other science. And it was interesting. I don't know, what did you think? What were your thoughts on that?
It's just crazy to, sorry. It's just crazy to think that, you know, they were taking those tweezers and squeezing this little thing and it was soft and pliable, and that came from a dinosaur fossil. I mean, they're rocks. I mean, or they're supposed to be, right? So
Right, a fossil is a rock, right?
yeah.
And so it's interesting because she said she was afraid to tell other people and that they were ridiculed by the other scientists, right? And so I would ask, why were they afraid? And why were they ridiculed? And you know, this is important to think about, because and people always ask me this. They say, how is it possible that how is it possible that all these scientists could be either lying about it or could be wrong? And you have to realize that to be a paleontologist, you're all going to the same schools, you're all going through the same internships. There's not that many jobs out there, and they all have the same paradigm. And if you have a different paradigm, you're not getting the job. And so people think, and they've written journals and they get funding on this sort of stuff. And so is it some big conspiracy? You know, I think 80% of them, maybe 75, I'm just throwing numbers out there. I think the majority of them are not in a conspiracy at all. But I think that there are a few out there that are hell-bent, no pun intended, on protecting their anti-God beliefs. And so, and they will ridicule it and they will attack it, and it was. And it's interesting to see what humans do when they get an idea that is new and that they can't understand. In the scriptures, what they did was they killed people prophets who came and told them, you're doing things the wrong way, you need to repent. Mm-hmm. People get so angry and they will kill them and stone the prophets, right? And so it's just, to me, psychology has been interesting to me in my life as well. And so it's interesting to see the psychology behind this and how people have a hard time grasping this new idea that they've heard their whole life. So there's so much more I could show you, man. I got so many slides. I've got footprints of man walking with dinosaurs.
Wow.
I've got dinosaurs, long-necked dinosaurs on pottery, on cliff walls. I'm not sharing my screen, huh?
Right.
on cliff walls. I've been to one of these dinosaurs on a cliff wall. I climbed up 12 feet, almost broke my neck.
That one's in Utah, huh?
This one's in southern Utah.
Wow.
Here's long necks on ancient Egyptian pottery. I mean, there's so much. Here's a interesting looking creature in Cambodia.
Mm.
There's a there was a Chinese Marco Polo and Alexander the Great were great explorers. And Alexander the Great traveled the world, and he talks about in his travels where his soldiers had to fight a dragon. I don't know why I'm going back to dragons, but real quick, Marco Polo, he is famous for his book traveling to China, and in China he talks about the emperor of China was training dragons to pull his chariots, and he also had a job in the royal palace was a dragon feeder. So kind of interesting stuff that kind of gets subverted and hidden over time. But ultimately, the dinosaurs, died out. Some of them would have been taken on Noah's Ark. A lot of them died in the flood with a lot of the other animals. Obviously, Noah took 2 by 2. We love Noah's Ark. Our kids, we have a few Noah's Ark toys at home.
So, the dinosaurs on the Ark, I guess they would have had to have been pretty small to fit, right?
That's a good question. Like, how did you get a Brachiosaurus on an Ark, right?
Yeah.
That's funny. So I actually have a joke about that one. Picture that I need to put on, but of someone trying to shove a Brachiosaurus onto an Ark because they're huge. I mean, those things were, 60 tons, 100 feet long. Yeah, there's no way you could fit one of those on, right? But if you actually look at a dinosaur egg, the average dinosaur egg wasn't much bigger than an ostrich egg. As a matter of fact, most of them were smaller. They still have fossilized Triceratops eggs I can hold in my hand. So what I think Noah did, and that's what a lot of people say is the argument against Noah, is they say there's no way he could have fit all the animals on Earth on a boat. That's impossible. And it's interesting because the theory of evolution has a lot of impossibilities too. Like that everything evolved from a single cell organism and somehow got more DNA information into it. Like at first it didn't have any DNA information for an eyeball or an ear, but then all of a sudden one day it popped up in here because it said, I want to hear something. Like some amoeba or some frog or salamander said, I want to hear, I want to grow a leg. It's like, well, it was doing just fine as a pond scum. Tell me why at some point it needed a leg. So anyway, they come up with all these evolutionary impossibilities, and they say, well, Noah couldn't have fit all those animals on the ark. That's impossible. And it's like, well, it's not quite impossible because if I was Noah, I would have taken baby animals on the ark. I wouldn't have taken a full-size elephant. Those things are huge. They eat a lot. They poop a lot. Oh, I would take a baby elephant, and I would take a baby dinosaur, and I would take maybe the eggs, maybe you don't have to carry as much food, and then again, Noah wasn't taking a Shih Tzu poodle and a mastiff on the ark, and what are all the breeds of Chihuahua, all the breeds of dogs we have, those breeds are brand new. The Shih Tzu poodle is something we've bred in the last 100 years or less. And so he might have taken two dog kinds and maybe two of different kinds. He didn't have to take all the deer. And maybe he took 2 deer, and maybe they, over 1,000 years, they've bred and interbred into different species of the same kind. They're still deer, but they have a little bit different antlers. And once again, evolutionists say, that's crazy to think that they all came from different animals. It's like, well, you think that all the animals came from a worm, which is more crazy. And so, like, Noah didn't have to take 1,000 species of dogs, right? He took just a few different. And to me, it starts to make a lot of sense. And there's a lot of evidence for Noah's Ark. Have you heard where they think they found Noah's Ark?
I don't think so.
So on Mount Ararat, which is where the Bible says it rested, on the mountains of Ararat. So Ron Wyatt is an amazing guy. He has found some incredible things. But back in the 60s, they were scanning for nuclear missile silos in around Russia, and they found this odd-shaped thing in the mountains. And they said, that does not look man-made. What is that? And so they started studying it, and they put it on 60 Minutes, and they had it in the news. But they came back and they said, no, it's not the same size as Noah's Ark, because Noah's Ark was supposed to be 450 feet long, and this one they found was only 550. This one was too long. It was actually 515 feet long. And they said, oh, it's not it. But look at that thing. Doesn't that look like something man-made, something different?
Yeah, it does.
And they're like, how did that form on Earth? So anyway, they were using a cubit. We know that in the Bible, he made it 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and I think 30 cubits tall. So what is a cubit? Right? A cubit is from your elbow to the tip of your fingers. And my cubit's about 19 inches long. I've measured it before. But so they were looking for a cubit that was close to mine, about 19 and a half or something inches. And so they thought it was 450 feet. But then Ron Wyatt went and researched. Moses was the one who wrote the book of Genesis. And the royal Egyptian cubit at the time of Moses was 21 inches. And when they did the royal Egyptian cubit, it was exactly 515 feet.
Oh, wow.
And they measured the width was the same, and the depth they can't do, the height, because it's mostly buried. So anyway, Ron Wyatt went out there and did a ton of research on it. He took metal detectors all over this thing and found metal all in it. And he put a rock on every spot and made these yellow lines. And he was able to map out where he thinks the bulkheads and the walls and things were. And who would have ever thought that Noah used metal, right? I always thought Noah was this old man. He just hammered pegs in. He wasn't very very good at making stuff back then. But they found what they think are metal rivets, laminated wood. When they say pitch, he used a lot of pitch and tar. They can kind of see the tar oozing out of the side of the wood. They found these, or go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, so it looks like the walls, like there's some type of wall. Are those walls made out of wood, or like what's the material there, and where did they find the wood?
So they didn't find any wood. I think they found a little bit of fossilized wood, but this is mostly a dirt structure. They did at the very end carve away the dirt on the side walls, and they did find shading of where they would be a ribbed timber.
Okay.
I may have a picture of that. Let me look. I don't see a picture of that, but he did. Oh, there it is. Yeah, you can see here where they shaved away finally the dirt, and you can see these white vertical things.
Yeah.
The lines going up and down.
Right.
And then they also found these rocks that were down in the valley, and they had huge holes in them, and they were about 9,000 pounds each, and they had carvings all over them. And what they believe these were, they call them drogue stones, but they would, in the ancient days, they'd hang them under the boat to stabilize the boat. And they believe that Noah dropped these after he cut the ropes, after he was about to go ashore at some point. So after lots and lots of research, the country of Turkey held a ceremony, built a little museum, and made this officially the site of Noah's Ark. The government confirms that this is Noah's Ark, and today, if you go drive down the road, you'll see the road sign that says "Turn here for Noah's Ark" in Hungarian or Turkish, whatever they speak over there.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
And as a matter of fact, there's also more evidence for it. I won't get into it all, but there's like legends about it. There's a city called the City of Eight, because there were 8 people on the ark
Interesting.
near there. So yeah, it's exciting to learn that what the scriptures teach are true and that there's evidence for it. And I love that in the Book of Mormon it also talks about dragons multiple times, and the Jaredites are fleeing from some massive serpents at one point. Another evidence of dragons. It talks about the Lamanites fighting like dragons, and then the Jaredites in the Book of Ether were running from these serpents for a long time, and they eventually the serpents hedge up their way that they could not pass. And I'm like, that seems like some pretty massive, scary creature that they could block them, and not just a bunch of snakes potentially. So, gosh, there is dragons on the gates of Ishtar back in. There's so much about dragons. I better stop.
Oh, that's
It's
okay.
been fun talking to you. Thanks for
Yeah.
for lending me your ear and listening as I ramble on about this crazy topic.
Oh no, it's been so interesting. Thank you for sharing. So I mentioned your presentation that you're going to give in a couple of days, and unfortunately, this podcast won't publish until next week, so it'll be too late for anyone listening to be able to attend your presentation. But do you think you'll do another one next year? Well, what are your thoughts?
There is a Firm Foundations conference in April, and I'm hoping to present there. They talk about Book of Mormon locations,
Okay.
where they think the Book of Mormon took place, and they talk somewhat about this sort of thing. I'll hope to maybe do a presentation in April, and I'm hoping also to create a YouTube video on this as well. So,
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
yeah, it'd be
Cool.
fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeremy, so much. It's been a pleasure. Good luck on your presentation. I hope it goes well.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's been really neat. It's neat to meet people like you that are really open-minded and wanting to learn, because I think that's what life is about.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.